Marlene 3D History. M2W Productions LLC.
I don't know how and I don't know when, but we're gonna be free one day, free one day. The freedom train is coming around the bend, but we're gonna be free one day, free one day. We're gonna step on board and be free at last. We're gonna be free one day, free one day. Good morning. How are you this morning? The soldiers came and said to me that you wanted to see me. You wanted me to account for being away from my post. Yes. You are concerned that my work isn't worthy or not. I believe my work is worthy. I would like to tell you how it was when we were slaves. I came out of Rutherford County, Tennessee. I came out with a group of people that decided to take our freedom, and we were freedom seekers. Yes, and we followed the Cumberland and the Tennessee rivers to gain our freedom. We saw both Bedford Forrest Army and the rebels that was to our north. Yes. We decided to take our freedom. And if we were to take our freedom, we could suffer all kinds of abuse. Yes. Or we could even be killed. Yes, we decided that night after we had loaded the wagon, Mrs. Bradford. She put her belongings and her children aboard that wagon and took one of the slaves as a driver. She was headed a little further south to a refugee camp. That night we talked it over and we decided we were going to run. You better run, 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 run. You better run, 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 run. You better run, 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 run. You better run to the city of refuge. We took off. We tied some provisions in a rag. We followed the rivers. We saw some of Bedford Forrest's men. Then we saw some of the Federals. We got to a place called the Duck River. The rebels had sunk one of their ships at the mouth of the Duck. We boarded the ironclad that the Union had. Iron was wrapped all the way around the ship. But when we boarded that ship, the Union soldiers called us contraband. We liked that name, because that means we were free for a while. We rode on that ship, and that river emptied out in Paducah, Kentucky. We thought that the ship was going to head north, the way that the sun came up. But it headed south towards the Mason-Dixie land. And we heard the ship touch the rocks that they call the chain of rocks. We were worried that they were going to take us back south, back into slavery. Yeah. But they let us off at a place that they call Mound City. It was where they were fixing the ships for the Union. It was where they had a hospital there they called the Marine Way Hospital. They fed us. They gave us beans and corn pone. Then they showed us where we could have a little shanty. And this little shanty was down on Diamond Street in Mound City. The month was December of 1862. Yes. December. Cold. There was ice in the soil, in the dirt. They gave us some grass to put down over those ice particles that was in the ground. When you laid on it, it was like needles sticking in your body. We can look up. We can look up, and we can see the stars through the shanty. Well, the next days or so, we were looking for work because we needed to be able to take care of ourselves, to feed ourselves. There was a person that came down on Diamond Street that said that the sanitary commission that had come to town was looking for workers or volunteers for a ship they call Red Rover. The Red Rover had come into Mound City and was moored there. And it had just came out of St. Louis. The Red Rover had been taken to St. Louis to be retrofitted for a hospital ship. And it also had guns that could fight if need be. And it had been a Confederate boat. It was a sidewinder. And it had been captured by the Union on Island 10. Yes, we learned all of this when we went down to talk with the nuns. The nuns, they were part of the Holy Cross. The Sisters of the Holy Cross. There were other nuns that we came to know, the Sisters of Mercy. Yes. We learned that the doctors or the surgeons on the Red Rover was looking for workers or volunteers. Yes, we decided to go down there. At least we could get something to eat. But they hired us. They hired us as first-class boys. First-class boy. As a laundress. As cooks. As washers of clothing. Coal porters. But they also hired nurses. And that was the job that I took. I had worked back on the plantation there at the Bradford plantation with an old lady that worked there. She was an old woman. And she was teaching me how to deliver babies. So they hired me as a nurse. Yes. Sergeant George Bixby was over us nurses. These surgeons and doctors did not really want us there, but they didn't have to pay us much. $8 for a first-class boy. Yes. There were 5 of us. There was Ann Graves, Mary Warfield, Mattie Perkins, Margaret Jackson, and myself, and Bradford Stokes. I just took the Stokes name because I married my husband last month, Gilbert Stokes. Yes, and the nurses, Sister Callista, Sister St. John's, Sister Adele, they taught us how to do our reverses, the bandages, so that the soldiers could keep the flies off of their wounds. Yes. We went back up to Paducah and picked up the injured. Yes. When we went to Paducah, we were going up that Ohio River. The ship was clean. It was so nice. But when we came back, all the beds were full. We put down grass and pallets for the soldiers. Yes. We disembarked these soldiers to the hospital, the Marine Way Hospital. We cleaned the ship again. We took on supplies, and we were ready to go south. Yes, we went south. Late January, headed south to other skirmishes. We moored there at the mouth of the White, and the soldiers fought just outside of Fort Hindman. We did not take on any damages or shells at first. But when we were loaded with the injured and the sick to head back to Mound City with our load, one of the shells came through the top of the ship and went through the second level. It didn't hurt anybody, but the ship was damaged. We fixed the ship and we made our way back to Mound City. Again, we disembarked the soldiers off of the ship to the hospital. We took on more supplies and we went back down the river. Sometimes we would go up the White River. Then we would go up the Arkansas River. We kept on going on south. And then we came to a place called Milliken's Bend. There had been a scrimmage there. The soldiers were recently hired by the Federals. They were ex-slaves. General Grant had taken other soldiers and was headed on south, trying to find a way south of Vicksburg. And these soldiers were to protect that fort there at Milliken's Bend. These soldiers had just been given their rifles, and many of those rifles had jammed. And all they had to fight with was bayonets. And we picked up several soldiers, one Union, one Federal. Each had a bayonet in them. Yes, I saw a lot. Then that scrimmage, they call the Vicksburg scrimmage. It lasted a long time, more than a month long. You could see the bullets flying during the nights, flying overhead. We picked up both Federals and rebels off of the field. Sometimes we had to get those soldiers to the field hospital that was located just behind the advance of our soldiers. Snipers was everywhere. The ravines was deep. And you could look across the ravine and you could see the eyes of the rebels. We picked them up. I got so good at keeping the surgeons' bags packed. It had saws and knives and all the instruments, the scalpels, to take off a limb in less than 15 minutes. I worked these fingers to the bone. And you have sent your soldiers. You've sent your soldiers. And asked me if my work is worthy or not. I hope just hearing some of the things will give you an idea of what we nurses and contraband have been through. We went out into the fields and the swamps. We went out into the fields to pick all kinds of natural herbs. Many of the Federal soldiers were standing in the water. Their legs and feet had swelled to where they got trench foot. Yes. We took bark off of some of the trees, like dogwood trees. Oh, it helped with malaria fever. We dug up the poke root. Some of the young men got what they call the camp itch. Oh, each soldier had a ration of whiskey. Yes. I saw and heard many of the finest and best young men get their limb amputated. At first, when I first started nursing, we weren't wanted by the doctors or the soldiers. But as the battle continued, we comforted many of the young soldiers. We put a cloth on their forehead. We fed them. We sang to them. We listened to them talk about back at home and wanting to see their mothers and brothers and sisters. Many of the nurses, I saw them writing letters for the young men. Sometime the last letter that they would ever send home. I have been sick for more than a month now. That's the reason I have not been on my post. Yes. I've seen so much tragedy. And I believe and I pray that you will find my work worthy of not being so that I would not be court-martialed. You are the committee that have my life in your hand.